So welcome everybody who's here for this monthly webinar that I'm doing. I was just speaking with Dawn ahead of time before we got started. This is one of the most interesting webinars that I have put together because I feel like I've learned so many different things. I feel like I was just like, oh, I'm just like capturing stuff that I'm learning. So I feel like it was like interesting ahas for me. I'm excited to see where you all are at. So what we're going to be talking about today is how to transcend the 4 fears that stand between you and your consulting or coaching potential. So this is all about dealing with the feels. So I could appreciate for those who are on that you may or may not want to have your face on here because of the vulnerability of the topic. But I do really appreciate Dawn and Indy for giving me somebody to actually look at. So I definitely appreciate that. So, for those who don't know me, I just want to be clear on who I am and introduce myself. I am an ex-Disney consultant turned business mentor and brand messaging strategist. And this is very important. I work with remarkable consultants and coaches and their unique strengths. So everybody I work with, I just love. Everybody's amazing. And I'm all about building businesses that are aligned with who you authentically are. Um, when we get to the end, if you stay tuned, I will tell you my number one strategy for transcending fear. And you're going to hear me use the word transcending fear quite a bit in this one, because I'm not a big believer of overcoming fear or combating fear, because I don't believe that fear is our enemy. Fear is our friend. And so it's about transcending maybe the difficult aspects of it. And that is going to be what we are going over today. And if you stay tuned toward the end, I will also have live Q&A. So please add your questions to the chat so that we can make sure that they are covered. My goal is like, I normally really love the interactive, but just given our time, my goal is just to kind of get through the content and then do the interactive to the end. But if you've been on my workshops, you know I really have a hard time not being interactive at different points in time. So again, thank you to Dawn and Indy for allowing me to do that. So this is the right webinar for you. This is the right masterclass is if you have a vision for the impact and impact that you want to have, I mean, the impact and the income both together, making a difference, making money that you want to create through your own consulting or coaching business. And you're done playing small, I can't speak today. You are done playing small and settling for less than your potential. So you're sick of it. You're done with it. And you're ready to address those fears that are standing in your way. So that is what we're going to be talking about. And that's the big question. How do you do this? And more importantly, how do you do this without that white knuckling your way through fear, or really like the self-abusement, I would say, in terms of like calling your fears negative words and looking at it as a negative thing rather than it's just a part of your humanity. So that is what we are going to be going over today. And I'm going to share a little bit about my story. If you were on the webinar I did in January, you might have heard this story, but I'm going to explain it from the fear angle. So here's my story. I was an internal consultant at Walt Disney World. I was an OD consultant. It was so much fun. I had a great experience. I hit a wall. My dad died. And I'm like, I've got to I need to get control over my time and my career. So I left and I started my own consulting business. And so through my consulting business, I had the opportunity to work with clients all around the world. You could hear a lot more about my story on different podcasts I've been on blog posts and all of that. And it was great, I guess. But the problem was it was the wrong business. When I left Disney, there was a little interim time, where I was actually really pursuing other types of education because I really wanted to work more one-on-one with people. And I've always had this fascination with branding, identity, and all of that kind of stuff. But I just didn't have the courage to go after it. So I did say in January, when I explained my story, like it took a lot more money and time to start the right business. And when I did, it was a game changer. But now I really want to get into what took me so long. And I think you all know what it is, because if you signed up for this webinar, you probably were in the same boat. And it was fear and imposter syndrome. It was all of those things, because the reality is for me, with my consulting business, and then eventually when I started training other consultants in my OD consulting best practices and all of that, like this was proven and it was safe. I knew how to do this, but all the things that I really wanted to do, it was really new to me, or it felt new to me. What was interesting now that I'm coming full circle, I just interviewed on somebody's podcast a couple days ago where we were talking about my approach to corporate politics. And all of a sudden, it's like it hit me. I'm like, what I did in for corporate politics, or I positioned myself in the organization, is literally the same work I do now as a branding person. But back in that time period, I didn't realize that there was a consistency in what I wanted to do. So it felt new to me, but more importantly, it felt more authentic to me. What I do now is a lot more authentic to me. And we all know what happens with authenticity. What's the problem whenever we want to get out there and be authentic about who we are? I'm going to let Don answer that one.
Well, you can only be as authentic as you're willing to be vulnerable.
Aha. And that's exactly it. But the good news about vulnerability is there's the word ability in it. It's the ability to be wounded. And I didn't necessarily have that skill developed and honed. So we're going to talk about what does that look like and how to be vulnerable in a context of safety and an ability to protect yourself in the proper way. So I want you to think about, what it is that you want to create for your consulting and coaching business. So I just want you to anchor that in your head. So just think about that for a second. And now think about, what if you had the rock solid confidence to achieve that dream? Like, what would that look like? How would that feel to you? Is if you had everything, not even just the skills, but you had that inner confidence, like, yes, what I want to go after is meant for me and I'm going to do it. Like, what difference would it make? I can't help myself. So Don, Indy, or anybody who's listening who wants to answer this question, tell me about your response to this.
Oh, it's massive. People can tell when you're confident. I mean, it just shows your competency, your capacity. Whatever it is that it is, you're effervescent about it.
Yeah. And then think about it from the client standpoint. Like, I remember when I was trying to figure out like investing in my first website, and it's like, I think it was like $14,000 back in, 2010. So that was a lot of money. But I remember like what got me over the hump was the guy that I was hiring. And he says, I know exactly how to help you. I know exactly what to do. Like, that was like, oh. And then without that website, I don't think I would have the business that I have right now, because that really transformed even my perception of who I am and my image. But he said those magic words, I know exactly how to help you. So the confidence isn't just about like, oh, I could do what I want. It's instilling confidence in your clients. And that's what we need to do as consultants and coaches. And think about it, what it would mean to your career, but also your personal life, your spiritual life, and your sense of purpose. I am a firm believer that the work that we want to do is the work that we're meant to do, and that we have an obligation to the world. Like, we have been given these gifts, not just for ourselves and our own happiness, but we've been given these gifts to help other people. So just think about what that would mean, in every aspect of your life. So now we are clear on why we're here and what this is all about. Let's talk about the 4 fears. What is fear and why do we have it? So fear, in the just the basic definition, is it's an unpleasant emotion that alerts us to a threat of getting our normal human needs met. It's an unpleasant emotion. Really, at the end of the day, that's what fear is. It's an emotion and it's unpleasant. And what it's indicating is that there's a threat, either a current need. It's really an anticipatory one, because if you're in the current state and a need's not getting met, you might have other feelings: anger, disappointment, sadness, and all that other stuff. Fear is an anticipatory, unpleasant emotion that sometime in the future, these needs won't get met. And so here's the change paradox. I think this is fascinating. I'd love for you all to comment on this one. We live in a world of constant change with brains that are designed to hate change. Our human brains are trained to associate the unfamiliar with dangerous, and it uses warnings to get us to react quickly. Like the whole proverbial, like, there's a bear in the woods, and, so you have a fear, a human fear, and it pops up every time we step outside our comfort zones. But this brain, the way that we are wired as human beings, we are in a world that literally is constantly changing. I live in Denver now, and it's been interesting moving from Florida to Denver and seeing the change of seasons outside my window all the time. And I have this like one chair that I sit in when I have like my meditation time in the morning, and I look out at the trees, and the trees are constantly changing. Like every day they seem different. Like, oh, there's like an empty tree and it looks like there's a leaf on there, where, a couple weeks ago there was a ton of snow, like it's constantly changing. We're in a world of constant change, but we have a brain that is designed to hate that change. Anyone else think that's interesting? I thought that was interesting. And why is it interesting? Poor you two guys just sitting on the video, knowing that I'm just going to keep looking to one of the two of you to take turns. I'll just leave it as you all process it internally and just reflect on it. So what are we afraid of? And it's really our human needs. So I'm going to go back to Maslow and go back to that whole thing, but put it in the context of our world as consulting and coaching business owners. We're afraid that our human needs for emotional, physical, spiritual well-being, they won't get met. Our financial security, our needs for connection and belonging, competence and esteem, and self-actualization. What happens for us is when we are in our current job, our current business model, we know and trust what got us here, the whole Marshall Goldsmith, like, what got you here won't get you there. But the reality is we know and trust what got us here. But the problem is what got us here isn't working anymore. So when we are in our corporate job or a business that we have long outgrown, we might have looked at self-actualization. I think this is a big problem that is in our society today is self-actualization is like misinterpreted to be status and symbols of our accomplishment. And so we think like climbing the ladder and hitting the top, it's like, oh, okay, I've self-actualized. But when you get to the top and it's like, oh, this doesn't feel that great, it's not satisfying. It's because those symbols of power aren't necessarily what self-actualization is. Self-actualization is more aligned to, being living our purpose, being our authentic selves and all that kind of stuff. We might have built a career and expertise over time with our specialized education, our experience, but now we want to do something different. So like, how in the world is that? What are we going to do here? Or we have like these amazing colleagues, but we're missing out with these loved ones, or we have financial security, until we're laid off. And then this is a big challenge that people who come out of a corporate environment struggle with is we sacrifice our health and well-being for the sake of career success. So this is what gets us to this place that we are in, and we know and trust this world. The problem is that we have no idea how we're going to meet all of these new needs that are emerging for us, and that we want something different. Like we want self-actualization that's an expression of our true purpose. We don't want to just do things that we're good at. We want to use our gifts. We want to have work that reflects our passion. And yes, we want time with loved ones, but we still want our colleagues to collaborate with. We still deserve and want predictable and scalable income, and we want time to invest in being our best self. So when we're caught between here's my current career or my current business model that is good, but no longer satisfying, and then this vision that I have, we have no idea how we're going to get all these needs met. And then hence thus now we have fear is introduced into the equation because it's alerting to us that we have these human needs that will need to be met in the future. So I'm going to pause here, comments, thoughts, feedback on how I'm setting this up.
I think my hesitation is more based upon experience and personal preferences. I've worked as a technical sales engineer and I dealt with sales and people and the business side of things. And it's not my passion or desire, but I would like to go in that path as a technical person or engineer. I like to stay in that realm more than get the business and run that aspect of it. I think that's the hurdle I'm trying to jump while starting my own business.
So is it that how you can integrate different aspects of what you still really like into this new world that's kind of causing you challenge, or is that the right way to frame it, or is there never a better way I could have reframed it?
I
Frame
think
it.
that's a decent way to put it. I'm more of a technical person. I mean, I can deal with people. I did technical sales and I help people that way. I think I dealt with higher level management and very large corporations in the United States. And I think the integrity is not there with a number of people. And I really hope that more people have integrity than I've seen in the past in different companies. I don't have a lot of faith in that. I think that's just an undesirable of dealing with that aspect of starting a business. The tech side, yeah, I can deliver all this stuff. I mean, that's no big deal. I've done it for years. It's more of the people side, the marketing side, building the business. I try to find a way to get over that. I think that's part of why I came to this discussion.
Oh yeah, we're definitely going to talk about like where the marketing issues might come in. I do have a podcast I want to do around like how do consultants and coaches with our idealistic hearts, really thrive in this world where there's a lot of short-term profitability and a lot of things that are go against, what it is that we value and how do we deal with that. But we'll definitely get into more about the marketing side. Anyone else have comments about, how this whole idea is resonating or not? So Rob says it rings true. My nice sweet guinea pigs, Indy and Don, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, something that occurs to me is that I would say for myself, speak for myself, I'm afraid that I'm going to spend a lot of time and money creating something that ends up being fruitless, that doesn't do like I kind of create it in a vacuum as something that I think is valuable, but then when I get it out there, people are like, I don't know what to do with this, or I don't know how to engage with that, or that's not at all what I wanted. And so that uncertainty, it really should drive me to places like this where I can get help and touch base with experts who can help me understand how to make sure that what I'm doing is going to be valuable and still fits what you're talking about of like what creates passion in me, what creates me to be excited. And then if that works, then you've got a blueprint to go forward that should be both profitable and compelling for yourself.
Well, thank you, Indy, for giving the big picture of where the rest of this masterclass is going to. So thank you. We are going to address that. It's like, you're reading my mind of like, this is exactly where we're going. Before we get into the specifics, so I think we're all jonesing to get into the specific fears and how do we address them. I just want to address one other thing, and then we'll jump into that. And I want to reframe the whole idea of the gift of fear. Getting into this whole preparation for this webinar, my whole view of fear just kind of got flipped upside down, and it's really a gift. And here's why. Has anybody heard of Dr. Paul Brand? He is I think he's fascinating. So he worked with leprosy patients in India and then in the US. And so the thing about leprosy is that this is a disease that is caused by not being able to feel pain, which seems like, everything that we would ever want as human beings to be free from pain, because none of us want pain. And fear is definitely painful. And so it seems like this would be great. Like, wouldn't we all want to be leopards, in some ways, if we could be free from the pain of being alive? But the problem is with having no pain is you're unaware of the damage. So that's why, you see all of the stuff where, people with leprosy like lose their arms or different things that happen because they are unaware of things that are causing them harm because they can't feel anything. And so what we forget about as human beings as well is we want to get rid of all the unpleasant emotions, but all these unpleasant emotions provide vital protective functions, warning systems. And the gift is that it prevents us from experiencing harm. So all the questions around like, well, I don't want to waste money, on something that won't work. Like, well, that's your survival brain saying, well, let's pay attention to that. And let's make sure that we can mitigate it. Like all of these things are a gift. And if you think about it, there's a this discontent that gets us to leave our secure 9-to-5s and get into a business. And that whole wake-up call is a wake-up call. Like I have a human need for self-actualization that's just not being met. All of that discontent, when you think about that call to adventure that the heroes go on, they all seem to have that discontent. Dorothy's sitting there looking out of the fields, like wishing for somewhere over the rainbow. And Luke is like, I want to go to Tashi for some power converters. It's like all the discontent. I want something more, so that unpleasant emotion gets us to move. And the thing about self-actualization, this is like the big thing that I would love for everybody to walk away with, is self-actualization isn't for a lucky few. It's a human need, and it is designed to be met. There's sometimes where we think like, oh, I have these new values that are emerging. It's like, no, you have new needs that are presenting themselves that deserve to be met. And it's up to us to meet those needs. And so the fears that you have are gifts because they're highlighting like, yeah, you're on the right track. This is what you're meant to do. You're outside your comfort zone because there's needs that you want to get met. And to achieve these new needs of self-actualization, you have to shape the foundation. I just saw MJ the musical a couple weeks ago, and it's all about Michael Jackson and his story. This was a guy who lived in his zone of genius. He was a genius when it came to songwriting, performing, dancing, and all of that kind of stuff. But the rest of his foundation, he had nothing to rest it on. Judy Garland, is this famous person who like amazing gift, lived in her zone of genius, but she really didn't have the foundation and it didn't work. So when you think about like all of these needs that you have, it's like, oh, I want self-actualization and I need financial stability. I need health and wellness. I need meaningful connections. Like those all make sense and you need that. And so the thing about also things about like paying attention to your fear is that the peace, happiness, integration, wholeness, the sense of purpose that we all long for is a consequence of intentional action to meet all of your human needs. So now I realize, like, after working on this webinar, it's like, oh, this is what I try to do when I work with my clients one-on-one in my VIP brand building program. Is the first thing I have my clients do is do like an inventory of like, what is it that you want to create in your life? Like, let's talk big picture. What are the strengths you want to bring to the table? What is it that you want to achieve in all the other aspects of your life? Because the right business will deliver on all of these things. And so the thing about the fear is it's alerting you to something that you need to be paying attention to. And come on, move. And the feelings, both positive and negative, relate to the needs being met or unmet. So I want to make sure that we're clear is feelings are connected to needs. And what we can't do is we can't really whack-a-mole feelings. We have to deal with the needs. So, and then the other thing about the gift that I will just point out, and then I promise we're going to get into all the parts that everybody's really excited about is the specific fears, is what you potentially can achieve with your consulting or coaching business is directly tied to how well you manage your fear. I mean, bottom line, because this fear that you're going to experience pops up at every pivot point and every inflection point for your business. So you think about like, okay, I'm just getting started. I need to get out there, start getting clients. Great. Okay, well, now you have an opportunity to do a speaking opportunity, let's just say. Well, that's something new. The fears are all going to show up all over again. Oh, you might want to start a podcast. Oh, guess what? Here they are again. You want to write a book. Oh, here they are again. Like this is going to keep happening throughout your journey because if you're a growth oriented person, you're going to always wind up here, and that's a good thing. So that's the foundational information. Now let's get into the 4 fears and what everybody wants to get into. Are we all on the same page that fears are unpleasant emotions that are connected to anticipatory worries about whether or not you're going to get your needs met in the future? And are we all clear on that? You can just give me a thumbs up if it sounds good. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the fears and what part of our needs that they're connected to. So the first one's imposter syndrome. So that goes along with our confidence, esteem, and self-actualization. So this is the inner dialogue that you might have going on if you're dealing with imposter syndrome. Do I have what it takes to achieve my dreams? What if when it comes to the work I want to do, am I a fraud? Can I lay claim to the expertise I want to claim? This is a huge deal. Like let's say you have a corporate career and you've been a leader and now all of a sudden you want to become a coach and you want to be now all of a sudden it's a whole different expertise that you need to lay claim to. That's very different. So that will obviously create imposter syndrome. It's like, well, can I really claim this one? And then, how am I going to stand out? There's so many people, so that's one of the fears. Anything else you would want to add about imposter syndrome? I know we got coaches on this call who know a lot about imposter syndrome as well. Is there anything else that you would add about imposter syndrome?
I think you did a great job describing it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
The next one fear of rejection and or being seen. So I'll tell you where this one comes up with my clients. So I was talking to one of my clients the other day who's getting ready for a photo shoot, and we spend, I think, like at least 10 minutes about whether or not she should wear false eyelashes or not. And it was like, that's a fear of being seen, is like, well, what if I show up? Like, what if I show up in this, with pictures of myself? I'm a huge fan of using pictures on your website because it creates that limbic connection. So that fear of being seen, or that fear of like, oh, I'm going to put a social post out there about like, oh my gosh, like that kind of thing creates that anxiety. All of this is around that fear of rejection, fear of being seen. So what if I put out myself out there and no one cares? It's a little different than what you were talking about, Indy, but it's like that whole idea, like, oh, I'm going to put a post out and it's going to turn into crickets. Are there clients out there who want what I have to offer if I pitch something and they're like, oh my gosh, why are you pitching that? Or what if I left my loved ones down? Like, what if this whole thing doesn't work and all these people are depending on me? And one of the things about fear of rejection, being seen, or this isolation, I'll still put it into this bucket, dealing with the loneliness and isolation of working for yourself and by yourself. Anyone struggle with, how hard it is, especially since COVID, of being alone all the livelong day. So that's the fear of being seen. Any comments, questions, or feedback on this one? Nope. Money fears. This is a big one at many, many junctures. Like I had a ton of money fears when I was used to getting nice, big paychecks when I was a consultant. You can get this one and it's like you get one gig and it has your money for the year going to the B2C business, where it's like, how am I going to replace my income with consulting revenue? Like, how am I going to do that? If I go from corporate over here, if I shift my business model, the thing about the financial security, we deserve and need as humans predictability and consistency with our money. That's a big deal. So how am I going to do that? How am I going to find enough clients to pay me what I'm worth, or at least what I'm making now? And if I go after I love, this is so funny. I spent a long time with a client talking through this one on an intro call, and she kept going around. She's like, well, I don't want to be dependent on my husband if I go after this business because I'm used to making this kind of salary. And then I don't want to be dependent. I'm like, so are you assuming if you start your own business that you're going to be poor? Like nobody goes into business to be poor. By the essence of a business, you have to make money. So she's like, there's already this assumption is like, oh, if I do what I love, I will be poor. Rather than if I do what I love, this is my best way to make money. And then the fear of failure. So this is what, Indy, you were talking about. I think the fear of the failure hits all of these needs that are there. What if I fail and I spend all this money and time and this doesn't work? Or how will I get any of my needs met if this venture doesn't work? How will I deal with starting all over again? Will I lose everything? And it's like, oh my gosh, and what will people think? So all of everything. So the fear of failure is like all encompassing, like, oh my gosh, if I go out in this direction, I spend all this money, time, and it's a complete failure. So these are the 4 fears. And Indy, anything you want to add to this one, since this is one you brought up?
It just highlights all the more critical that you don't do this in a vacuum and don't let those fears run wild, but get people in your corner who can set you up for success.
Yes.
If I can add, I mean, this is about mindset. And so if I look at failure as being, that's the end. So what's interesting to me in this is that I need to know what works and I need to know what doesn't work, and they're equally weighted. So every time I actually have a failure, it gives me one step more to be able to get to where I want to go. I need to know that. They're equally weighted or equally valued, however you want to think about it. So failure really isn't it. It's really about, if you're an entrepreneur, it's about, can I stay persistent to this and keep learning? I don't have any judgment about learning.
Yes, that's so good. That is so good. I remember when I was first pivoting from consulting to some version of mentoring, and I thought my right pivot point would be is like, well, I'll just monetize all of my OD consulting tools and I'll create a course and all of that. And I was working with with that same web guy who I work with initially. So I went to his studio to record the videos for this course. And he's like, well, you know, what are you passionate about or this or that? And he was pushing me a little bit on it. Like, why are you doing this? I'm like, well, I just, you know, I just want to monetize my tools. And then he's like, well, we all have our failures. And I'm like, oh, well, that's like a weird pep talk, you know, before I get into my videos. But anywho, but it's interesting because I go back to that one. It's like, yeah, I did fail specifically on monetizing my tools. People don't really come to me because they, you know, like some people buy my toolbox because my toolbox is a nice, you know, name your price offer. And I got a ton of OD consulting tools, but people really come to me for what I really love to do. But I would have never known that if I didn't like make that transition in there. And then it's like, well, this failed, you know, or didn't fail, just didn't like achieve because I learned so much. I learned about how to create courses. I learned how to do videos. I learned all kinds of things through it. But it is about mindset. So let's talk about the compassionate approach to engaging and transcending fear. And what I mean by transcending is just what the word means is getting above the negative emotions and befriending fear. I don't believe in making fear just like disappear. So the first step is just to recognize when fear is present. You have to recognize the signs because sometimes I think sometimes we know, and I think sometimes we really don't know. You know, so the big mistake that we make is we're just going to ignore fear when it's present. You know, like we don't even recognize it, we don't see it. And the problem is when we do that, well, actually, I'll let you all answer it. What happens when you ignore fear? Does it go away? Does it get more productive and helpful? You know, what happens when you ignore those emotions? Have you ever done a workshop where you were facilitating and there was one participant who had something to say, and then you just, you know, it was a little bit disruptive and you ignored them? What happened to that participant? Did they become more productive?
That's never happened to me. Yeah.
No, what you do is
Yeah.
you listen.
Yeah.
You listen to the participant, listen deeply, write it on the flip chart, and then they can join you. You have to pay attention. So
Mhm.
you need to learn the signs when you're dealing with fear. You know, like kind of tap into your inner facilitator when you're dealing with fear. And when that part comes, like Don was suggesting, like leading with curiosity, is when the fear shows up and notice it, and again, then get curious about it. So learn the signs. So there's obvious expressions of fear. So this is where my inner dialogue and then what I say is all matched is obvious. Like, oh, I'm afraid, you know, so you might be actually saying like, I'm worried about money. I feel dread when I'm thinking about doing, you know, putting a social media post or putting my picture on my website or whatever. You know, I'm so anxious about putting myself out there, you know, like that's obvious. And you can, that's one way that we know how to deal with this when we're really connected and explicit. But what do we do when we are not as obvious, you know, when we have these masked expressions of fear is what I would call it. These masked expressions of loss of, control, vulnerability, or self-esteem. These are the less obvious ones. And if any of these resonate with you, you can, you know, put that in the chat or, you know, just say it or just give me raise your hand, you know, perfection paralysis, you know, which means like, I'm going to keep tweaking things, you know, like, oh, like I could see this when I'm working with my clients on their visual branding, where it's like, well, I really like that green, but can you make it like 2 shades this way? Can you move this thing, scooch it over here? Like, it's like, it has to be perfect. Some of the stuff that you talked about, you know, Indy could be as well as a little bit of perfection paralysis. Like I can't release it until it's perfect. Or analysis paralysis. So a lot of people I work with are sages. We're head people and we get stuck in our head and we overthink everything. You know, think. Don. Sorry. Do you want to speak to that one at all?
Well, I do want to add something, and that is that, and it is a less obvious fear. It's when you have a fear-based value, and so it's something that you actually you wrap your arms around it because you think it's a value, but you're not looking at what it's stemming from. And so something that may be generated from the value being based in scarcity, for instance. And so the question is what's the reframe so it actually is no longer a fear-based value?
That's good. That's good. Other expressions, procrastination, giving yourself away, undercharging, doing too much for free, education obsession. Like I have one of my clients, we worked on her website. It was ready to go 2 years ago. She still is getting ongoing certifications, won't launch the website. And it's not bad. It's just, there's fear, being busy, but not productive. Where it's like, I'm going to have the illusion of activity. I'm just going to sit on social media, or I'm just going to head to networking events, but I have no strategy, no purpose. Like hoarding, where you underinvest in your business. This could go connect to what Dawn just said about scarcity, over control, hiring experts and then fighting with them every step of the way, or flight in hell. All of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. Like I sometimes have people come to me and like, I need to work with you because I've had referrals and they've all dried up. And now I need to work on my marketing, and then we start getting into the work and it's like, oh, it was fine. I don't really need to work on my marketing. It's like, well, a couple weeks ago, this was a, major issue, but now it's not, but that's the flight into health. So you need to pay attention. Like, how can I become more aware when fear is present? And then when you become aware, follow the fear to your need. So this is Don's point about curiosity, leading with curiosity. Instead of saying, I'm going to white knuckle this thing away, it's like, interesting fear. You have arrived. I recognize your form. I have connected it. So now I see what I need to do. It's a big mistake is when you see it is to repress it, because the problem is when you oppress it, it's going to come out sideways. It's going to it's going to express itself. The whole idea, like I love Elizabeth Gilbert, but when she talks about in Big Magic, like you throw it in the back seat of the car, while you're driving, I'm like, I don't know. Throwing it in the back seat of the car and kind of putting a muzzle on it doesn't seem like it's going to be a really productive. If you've ever driven with kids who are disruptive and you try to get them to be quiet, they're not always the most, helpful, people in the car. So I don't know if I agree with that one. I love Big Magic. I love everything about it, except for that one part is you throw it in the back of the bus or the back of the car. So the fix is to deeply listen to the needs that your fears are alerting to you, because you can't action plan feelings without addressing needs. Asking the feelings to go away without meeting the need is not a winning strategy. The feelings will not go away until you meet the need. And so your job is to meet those needs. So let's give you an example. Looking at imposter syndrome. So here's some of the emotions that you might feel is I might have doubts about my skills and achievement. The anxiety of being exposed as a fraud, and guilt about deceiving others about abilities, or anxieties about performance, and shame feeling, because I have inadequacy. There's not just like one feeling that relates to one need. You just have to connect the dots. But the underlying need that you deserve to have met is competence and mastery in what you do. Authenticity and being true to yourself in your work, and validation that you have what it takes to achieve what you want. Those are needs. Meet the needs. So this is what Indy was saying is go talk to someone outside of you to make sure, because that is a way to meet your need. And so investing in that is going to be a faster way out of your emotions. You can go to counseling all day long about the emotions, but the emotions aren't going to go away until you address the underlying needs. So that's what you do is like, I have become aware, get curious, engage that part, and get to the needs so that you in your authentic higher self, as your internal CEO, can now take empowering actions to meet those needs. And that's the decision you need to make is, how can I get beyond the fear to the underlying needs? Or in Don's language, how can I activate curiosity around the fear rather than resistance or even guilt that the fear is even showing up? And then give the fears what they need. Give them meet your needs. That's the solution. Like this was to me like just working on this. I'm like, oh, the antidote. I don't have to like spend all this time working on things. I just need to meet my own needs. Like that's what I need to do. So you don't want to create these, surface level white knuckle solutions, because if you do that, it's not going to be satisfying. It's not going to be sustainable. You need to create the specific needs that are underlying your specific fears. So let's go into now the specific solutions as it relates to the emotions, the underlying needs, and the solution. Like, so the emotions around the imposter syndrome, we discussed. So what do? This is literally the solution that Indy just mentioned that you could do is you could hire a business mentor who could help you reflect on your past accomplishments and successes. Like this is a big thing that I do in my branding work is we do inventory on all the past work and figure out how to repackage it over here so that you can see that, yes, you have competency that translates over here. You know, as a business owner, we are all as consultants and coaches. If you're working for yourself, you're a business owner. So we need to equip ourselves with the competence, you know, the strategies and skills to achieve success. One of the big things I do in my mastermind community on a weekly basis is we work through the ticky-tacky skills that we all need. So we just finished a social media challenge and we work through it to incredible levels of detail. We didn't say, oh, you need to be on social media. We talked about a format for a social media post and different formats. We went through prompts to brainstorm content. You know, we went through the algorithms, like we got into the details. And so part of the issue that sometimes we have in our, you know, so many business coaches out there, like, oh, you need to be on social media, you need to have a website. And we're like, I don't know how to do it. Now I have imposter syndrome. This sucks. You know, and then to practice that self-compassion, you know, when you're learning new skills. I had Laura Gallagher. I think Don, you know her. Oh, Indy, you know her as well. And we talked about self-acceptance as the key. You know, like a toddler doesn't get pissed off when it's like falls down when it's trying to learn something new. It's not like, oh man, I just tried to walk and now I fell down. You know, this sucks. You know, like I was really good at crawling. You know, why can't I do this walking thing? You know, just gets up and falls down and keeps going. You know, and so that's how you deal with imposter syndrome. Now let's talk about the fear. Oh, did you want to say something, Indy? Were you saying something?
Nope.
I think David was.
Oh, David, do you want love David? All right.
Maybe
Don't
not.
he? Okay. So let's talk about the fear of being seen. So here's some emotions that might come up that relate to the fear of being seen. You know, apprehension of that how you're going to be perceived or judged, or nervous about putting yourself out there and the potential for negative feedback. You know, feelings of not being good enough compared to others, concerns about making mistakes publicly, you know, being lonely or worried about letting loved ones down. The needs, we have needs. This is important. I want you to own these needs. We deserve to have acceptance by our clients, peers, and our professional community. We deserve belonging. We deserve to be respected and valued for our contributions. We deserve emotional safety where we could express ourselves, you know, and we deserve meaningful connections with others. So the solution, join a supportive community. You know, get around other people who are in the exact same boat as you are to help you normalize your feelings, you know, to provide encouragement, to get rid of that feeling of isolation, cheer you on when you try new things. Like one of the people in my Corporate to Profits Academy, she had put a post out. She's a parent coach and she got all kinds of negative feedback, you know, that like she got some people like that. They were kind of like not really let's just say it wasn't the most constructive feedback that she got on her post. I'll just put it that way. You know, and she brought it to the community and the community worked it through with her where it's like, hey, you know, like here's how you could stay professional, you know, in your response. If it's a troll, delete it. You know, if it's a good constructive feedback, respond back and say, I thought about it. You know, if it's something that you're not quite sure about, she turned it into another post. The whole experience where she was like, I don't want to put myself on social media if I'm going to be talked to this way, got completely reframed. And she turned that experience into multiple different posts and it changed it from a very different perspective. And the other thing about a community and for other people, they give you empathy as you try new things. You know, so it's very important to surround yourself, especially when you think about when you're leaving corporate and you're starting a business, none of those people get what you're going through. You know, they're not there. And your family is not necessarily always the right ones to go to as well, because you know, your anxiety could, you know, trigger their anxiety. That doesn't really help. So you go to the people who are in the same boat so you could cheer each other on. Money fears. You know, money fears are about the anxiety of not being able to have what you need to meet your basic goals or to support other goals. So what you know, sorry. So the thing is own that need. You deserve to have the finances that you need to do your life. You know, you're not meant to live super scarce. So what you need to do, the solution around the money side is, yes, it would be helpful to work with a business mentor who can help you, but also get your financial experts involved. Like my CFO has been super helpful. I hired a CFO last year and I was like, oh my gosh, where have you been? You know, she takes care of my books. She takes care of everything. And I could talk to her about the money decisions, but also there's a monetization plan. So one of the things I started honing in on with my clients is, all right, let's talk about your brand, you know, your brand messaging on the whole, but let's get really clear in your offer. You know, like, how is your business going to make money? You want to make this, here's your offer. You know, how many clients do you need? And let's figure that out. So it's like in conjunction, like with somebody who could help you get a handle on it. Also, you want to develop realistic and achievable financial goals. Like I had an intro call a couple months ago with somebody who's like, I want to make $300,000 a month. Can you help me? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I have to be honest with you. I don't know if I could help you make $300,000 a month. I don't think that's a realistic goal. You know, like, unless like, you know, when you're just starting out from scratch, like you know, like you're just going to be disappointed with me. Like that doesn't feel really good to me. Um, Also there's like things that your financial person could help you with. Like I had my CFO on my podcast and she was like really going over how important it is that you have your expense line to be, you know, really matching your revenue to reduce taxes, and that how much money you'll save in taxes, you'll be able to invest in your business. I'm like, oh, well, that's good news. I didn't know about that. You know, if I wanted to invest in somebody help me in my SEO or what have you, like this is all good because it's going to help me on the other side. And then also making sure that you have the right money set aside for the ebbs and flows. So the money fears, you just got to give it a plan, a monetization plan. And then the fear of failure. You know, it's all about like concerns about not meeting your expectations, fear of letdown if it doesn't happen. You know, what do you do if I keep trying things and I got all these setbacks? Like setbacks are really difficult. You know, you can be, you know, like every day, I think Don always talks about like being resilient as F, you know, like how do you do that? But sometimes it's hard, you know, and what we need is success and significance in our work. We need all of those needs being met. So how do we deal with the failure? And this goes to Indy's point, is why do you need to bring all these experts on there? Is you need to become the CEO of your business. This goes also to what Don said about mindset, but big part of the mindset is I'm the CEO of a business. You know, every time Disney has ebbs and flows, it's not like the, you know, Bob Iger's like, oh my gosh, it's the worst. I'm a, you know, like the whole thing's going to flop. It's like, no, they bring all the right people around you to make sure that you are doing everything in the best way possible. You know, so think about where your skill sets are, where the gaps are, and fill in those gaps. Like technology and finance, you know, for most of us consultants and coaches, this is not our sweet spot. You know, so that's a good thing to get out. Branding and strategy and marketing and sales, like that's new for us, especially if you're doing it for yourself. And one thing that is vulnerable is we are the business, we are the product. So it's very challenging to put ourselves out there. So that's how you do this. So you need to think about, you know, so in terms of like the recap is you have needs and your fears are alerting you to them. The solution is to meet those needs. And so think about what do you need to invest in to help you meet the needs that are underlying your fears. That's the big takeaway, is thinking about what that looks like for you. And so in terms of the recap, fears are unpleasant emotions that alert us to when there's threats to getting our normal needs met. And they always show up when we step outside of our comfort zone. And these fears are a gift. And without fear, we'll be at even greater risk. And they're also a gift because when we address them with compassion, they set us up to thrive. The other gift that I didn't mention when we were on that slide that I want to highlight too is we are consultants and coaches, and everything that we do is helping our clients when they're in some sort of change time period. So the skills that we learn about our fears will help us become better consultants and coaches. And to transcend the fears, we have to recognize them, follow them, and meet the needs. That's the solution. So taking action, learn to love your fears, and you'll build a business you love. Bottom line. And if you want the slide deck, please email me at betsy@betsydordan.com. I also just want to let you know, I have a brand new freebie. It's your strategic roadmap to your authentic consulting or coaching brand and thriving business that you and your clients love. So if you want to head on over to on betsydordan.com/roadmap, you can get that new freebie. And also, I love your feedback on the freebie because I decided to make it more interactive and like a workbook. And I'd love to know if that was helpful or not. And then next month, I have a new workshop on how to create and use benefit-driven testimonials to win over future clients. I will tell you 100% of my clients struggle with creating testimonials. So if you want to have testimonials that are compelling and interesting, create the social proof that you're looking for, be sure to sign up for that. And then again, to wrap us up, the biggest mistake that we make is thinking that if we have fears or imposter syndrome, we're on the wrong track, rather than as evidence that we are. It's a natural part of our heroic and entrepreneurial journey. So again, love your fears and you'll have a business that you love, but fears are very tricky and very, very powerful. And that's why every hero or heroine has a mentor. And so the word mentor comes from the Odyssey, meaning mind and courage. So the mentors help the heroes and the heroines face what scares them the most. You think in every hero's journey, they're going off in the unknown, and the mentor is there to give that hero or heroine the courage that they need to move forward. So the number one strategy is to anticipate and engage fear with self-compassion, and when needed, hire somebody. You could hire someone like Dawn, who's amazing with mindset. You could hire somebody like me if you want something as it relates to your brand. If you're unsure of your gifts and your strengths, Indy's here, who is a strengths finder expert, but hire the right person based on what your needs are, and hire somebody who gets it, who gets what you're going through. So that is it for the formal part of our content today. Love your comments, thoughts, feedback, and any other questions that you might have. Do 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 do. Oh, I'm done with the music. That means somebody's supposed to talk.
Rob said this was very helpful.
Oh, well, thank you, Rob.
Yeah, I think it's all the more confirming that there is a cost to tuition. And so when you're a freshman at something, you don't know what to do. Like when you're the toddler, you're not really sure how to get there. And so you have people around you, and in this case, as professionals, we do need to invest in ourselves so that we can get to where we want to be.
Yes. Yes. And
Yeah, your presentation was very enlightening. Thank you.
oh, thank you, Scott. Anything you would want to add specifically? Did he go?
Per the chat, I put in the analysis paralysis and perfection paralysis. Those definitely hit home. I think it's more we're so busy focused on business, getting things done day to day, that the self-reflection doesn't really have time, or it's not a priority.
Yes. That's a good point.
And this definitely helps raise the point. The analysis needs to be done.
Don, what would you add about the time, carving out the time for self-reflection, since you're our curiosity guru here?
Again, I think it's critical. And to what I believe it was Scott was just saying, the paralysis, it's interesting. We get into this rationalization place. And so when we're there, the positive side is, okay, I've had enough. I'm going to go ahead and I don't like it, but I'm going to move forward. And the decision is made. But the catabolic side is going to be, I'm just going to freeze. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not. And so it's the same thought process. The question is, should I stay or should I go? So it's what moves you into that next place is just make it bite size. If you can actually kind of just be with whatever it is that you're feeling in that moment and make it bite size, because overwhelm is what's going on at that moment. And so it's just being able to get grounded, get present, and reframe what it is that you're seeing. You get to clarity then.
Mm-hmm.
And that can make all the difference.
That's good. What other comments, insights that you would want to share? Any best practices that you have around dealing with fear that I didn't bring up in this presentation that you think would be helpful?
Are you talking to me?
I'm talking to everybody.
Okay.
I know you've been on the hot seat a lot. Thank you. All right. Well, if there are no further questions or any other feedback, I want to thank you all for participating in today's monthly free workshop. It's really fun for me to get on these and get to know new people and see everybody here. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at betsy@betsyjordan.com. I understand that this is much more of a sensitive topic that it's harder to talk about in a group than, you know, talking about benefit driven testimonials or something like that. So I recognize that. So if you have a question that's kind of on your mind personally, feel free to email me and let me know. And if you want Don to answer some of the questions too, I will forward it on to Don as well, because he's our resident curiosity mindset guy here. And that is it. So hopefully I will see you all next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Bets. Nice
Thank you.
See
presentation.
you.
Thanks.